Hello friend, Greg here. Did you know that I created some Bangkok walking tours? Use your phone to listen to me yap on a GPS guided tour that takes you through some of my favorite parts of the city, giving you the skinny on the sights and history that make this place such a shambolic, wonderful mess. Head to voicemap.me and search for Bangkok. On this episode, we revisit a topic from Season 2. Do you have to be a weirdo to live in Bangkok?
So if you've ever wondered if rejecting all the comforts of home to live in a chaotic city like the Big Mango makes you strange, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to pioneer a modern style of saffron kilt for Scottish monks, but have never been able to find the funding to get this groundbreaking project a chance.
Genius, I tell you.
Yeah, good work.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 24 years ago, fell in love with Thai people whose last names have more syllables than anti-disestablishmentarianism, so I never left.
So funny. we don't plan these before the show. It's so funny that I read that because that's when I was in high school. I committed myself to learning like the biggest words in the English language. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I would study every social studies class in Miss McDonald's class. I would study a word until I remembered it. I didn't learn anything, but I was studying these little words. And anti-disestablishmentarianism was one of the ones I learned. I also memorized Phlox Nux and nihilophilopication. And the longest word in the English language, which has been verified by The Simpsons even, is pneumona ultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis. It took me like a week to learn how to say that.
I do not know that word at all. I thought it was like, I thought the longest word was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
It's one of them. I'm not even sure it's a real word though, but pneumona ultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis is an actual medical term. And yeah, I just remember there's some teachers like, Greg, do you have any questions? I'm like, no questions for me. I understand it all. I'm looking down. Pneumono ultra. Anyway, yes, well, Thai names do have.
Anyway, Thai last names, many syllables. Let's just say that.
Many syllables.
All right, want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we followed up on last week's main show with some further discussion points that our patrons have been discussing on Discord. Greg's soggy march to his car today on his way home from work on a very flooded soy, and tales of a visit to Wat Pak Nam to visit friend of the show, Pra Pandit, as well as a visit to the temple's extremely eclectic museum of extremely random artifacts. To learn how to become a patron and get all this good stuff, plus full access to over 700 bonus and regular back episodes, click the support button at the top of our website.
Man, that museum, one of the things in the cases was a big pile of old vinyl records. It looked like it was 100 years old, but I really wanted to take
might be worth millions.
Yeah.
It might be worth millions.
I really wanted to take one out and just like, can I just take this home? And Ed's got a turntable up late on his turntable. Anyway, as always, if you have a comment, a show idea, or just want to say hi, head to bangkokpodcast.com and click the little microphone button on the bottom right to leave us a voicemail that we'll play on the show. Alrighty then, well on this episode, we resurrect an oldie but a goldie from way back in Season 2 with our buddy Evo, and it's a topic that actually I've long wanted to revisit with Ed to get his opinion on. And not only that, but it's been 7 years since that episode aired, and I'm curious to see if anything has changed in my outlook on the topic. Now, I am, of course, talking about Season 2, Episode 48, titled, Do Only Weirdos Live in Bangkok? And the long and short of it is that Bangkok is not a place where a Westerner looking for a boring traditional life would move to, but that doesn't mean you have to be strange or weird or odd to live here. Or does it? So I always wanted to get your opinion on this because Evo and I had a good discussion about it, I remember, and I would like to sort of also revisit it and see how my opinions on the subject have changed, because again, 7 years is a long time in Bangkok and the city has changed a lot. So what do you think of this?
Well, I love the question. Kind of, do you have to be weird to want to stay in Thailand? You definitely don't have to be weird to want to visit here.
Not at all. No.
Obviously, 40 million tourists a year. Not all of those people are weird, but we expats, we're weird, or at least I think most of us are. But to me, I can get technical. It all depends on what you mean by weird. But I've mentioned this before on the show many times. I've said this to you. I rarely find expats who are boring. Like, expats are
Right.
almost always interesting in either a good or bad way.
Right.
They can be just fascinating people with cool degrees, or they're working on some cool NGO project, or they're on the lam from the law.
Or just complete lunatics. Yeah.
Yeah, that's to me, those are the classic things.
Right. And like we said, like, this is not a place where, someone out of grad school would be like, I'm going to move to Bangkok and just sort of like find a partner and settle down and have the white picket fence and have the traditional quiet lifestyle. Like, for various reasons that we've discussed on the show over the years, it probably would be an interesting place to live for a long time. But as a young person who wants to move here and have what a Western traditional lifestyle would be, I don't think it's going to tick many of those boxes. So it's not a place that you'd want to do that. So yeah, it's my thinking that in order to live and thrive in Bangkok, a lot of people could live here and be miserable, but in order to thrive here, you need to be comfortable with sort of a constant level of low-level chaos and unpredictability.
Yeah, I think this is
weird.
I think this is true. Yeah, maybe it is somewhat weird. It's funny. I don't. You and I both grew up pretty normal. Just kind of middle class, semi-suburban. I didn't grow up in New York or LA. I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland. You grew up in Calgary. Like,
right.
You and I are in many ways kind of generic Westerners. So I don't think of myself. I don't think of myself as weird culturally or due to my background. In fact, it's just the opposite. I grew up in cookie cutter America, just
right.
Box house, and then another box house, and then another box house. Like, for as far as the eye can see, like, that's my suburban. I'm a suburban where I grew up. So there's nothing. It's the opposite of weird.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then also, even just in my upbringing, I wasn't some crazy punk rocker with spiked hair who dropped out of school like in 7th grade. I mean, I was an altar boy. I did well, and I went to public schools. So I didn't even go to. When I was in law school, I met a bunch of private school people who went to like these expensive private schools, and I remember joking around with my girlfriend at the time who went to one of these things. It's like they all think that they're weird. It's like they realize that, like it's funny, but like often, like in the States, like rich kids think of themselves as weird.
Do they?
Because yes, they do, because the United States has such a huge middle class. Like, so when you're just kind of normal, it means you went to public school here and public school there, and then this. It's like there's so many other people like you, and so I have several examples of friends of mine who were very privileged, but in the States, they start thinking like, what's wrong with me? It's like,
oh,
I'm
that's
weird.
interesting.
Because they realize that they're weird. So the point I'm trying to make is, like, you and I are not weird by background.
No, and we're not weird. Like, we're not weirdos. We're not freaky, and we're not the guy that walks into the room and scares everyone. Like, we're normal guys.
I mean, it's an interesting question because, like, whatever. I teach university. I'm a liberal arts professor, so I guess that's kind of weird. I mean, most people don't do that or want to do that, or whatever. I've got a ponytail. Like, what you know what I mean? I don't know what you know what I mean. I don't know what is weird. But I think your point is well taken in that Bangkok has a chaos to it. Thai culture is difficult to get a beat on for Westerners. That's kind of the genesis of the podcast itself.
Right.
So maybe the fact that you and I adjusted to it, and even though we've both had our ups and downs, we haven't left. Like, you and I have had many friends who've just gotten frustrated and they're like, I'm out. I'm out of here.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think we have to peel back the onion of the word weird a little bit, peel back the layers, because it's a bit of a cheat, because no, you're not weird because you want to live here, but you're weird in the sense that you have to reject certain of the certain regulations and rules and norms that most Westerners are brought up to just believe is the way life should work. So, and that's what I mean with weird. Like, you're not a weird or like a strange person, but it's weird that you've comfortably been able to reject those foundational lessons.
Yeah, maybe unusual or not average is better. I was when I was back home from my high school reunion that I talked about on the show a little bit. I was just catching up with a buddy of mine. We're kind of in touch, just not weekly, and he said something like, "It's amazing that you have made a life in Thailand."
Okay. Why would you think that, though?
He's like, it's amazing. And I'm like, well, I guess, thanks. I don't think about it as amazing. It's just, podcast listeners know, it's like, I thought it was going to be here 1 year, and then it was 2 years, then 3. So to me, it has worked out.
Yes.
But, that's how I think about it. It has worked out. But and he's actually a super successful guy, doctor in the U.S. But he's just like, for him, it's unfathomable that he would live in another country, especially one in Asia.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's just, he's a successful American doctor. So it's completely out of his frame of mind. Like, wait, you live somewhere else? Like, it wasn't just like a gap year?
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then it's also Thailand. It's not France or... because he and I actually were in French class together in high school. It's a non-Western country. It's like, Thailand is. This is why you and I like Thailand. It's off the grid, but it's not South Sudan. You know what I mean? It's not. You know what I mean? So it's just enough off the grid that it's an adventure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think I've told this story on the show before, but this was exemplified to me after I'd been here a few years, and I went home and I met with my good friend's parents, who were very close to me growing up, and Bernie, my friend's mom, she was like, how's Thailand? I said, oh, it's good. She's like, so when are you gonna move back and get your life back on track? Like, have that, come back to be
get
normal,
your life
basically.
back on,
basically,
yeah, that's right. Said, get your life back on track. That's right.
And I sort of took offense to that. I was like, and I said, when are you going to leave this boring little one-horse town and come to Asia and live a more adventurous, exciting life? And she was like, all right, I get it. So, but you have to sort of break through that barrier of, you've been here 3, 4, 5 years, and people start to go, all right, time to come back.
I mentioned, it wasn't just that one buddy. I mentioned when I was back for my high school reunion, people did ask me if I was married, if I had kids, but it definitely was living in Thailand that was the thing. They were like, wait, you live in Taiwan, Thailand?
Yeah.
That was definitely the thing. And most of I was actually just surprised at my high school reunion how actually it's just, I had more fun than I thought, and a lot of the people who actually never left Ohio, I actually still had great conversations with them. But in their mind, I was doing something weird or special.
Right. Now, one interesting thing I wanted to think about was like I said, we recorded the original episode with Evo 7 years ago, and I was wondering if my opinion had changed based on the time elapsed. So, basically my takeaway from the first time we did this topic was, yes, you need to be a little bit strange to live here, and you need to be quote unquote weird, or what people back home would call weird, to thrive in Thailand. And I was wondering if you needed to be less weird now, considering the type of development and evolution the city has gone through over the past 7 years. And I kind of think you do. I kind of think in the past 7 years, the city has grown and matured and become much more cosmopolitan than it was 7 years ago, way more than it was 10 or 12 years ago. 7 years, I think, is just like the minimum amount of time needed to see that kind of change.
It's funny. I personally don't think that way,
really?
But I do think that way about Guru's like Joe Cummings and other people who came in the 80s or 90s.
Oh,
'cause when I
definitely,
came,
yeah.
my joke when I got here in 2000 is that there was a Starbucks and a McDonald's at the end of my street. That was in 2000.
Right.
But so when I look at the early adventurers like Joe, that's weird to me in a totally good sense. But I mean that when you're just one of the fewest foreigners here, but it is true that I mean from 2000 all the way up until today, it does seem to be getting progressively more foreigner friendly.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe we do deserve some props for being here in the knots.
I think so.
But for me, it's just like when I think back to like the pre-BTS, when I talk to foreigners who were here in the 90s and there was no BTS, no MRT, I'm just like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's completely insane.
But say let's set a benchmark for 10 years ago. So there was much fewer BTS and subway lines. There was some very nascent internet. I think like 3G was here, and that was about it. So you were forced to understand Bangkok, I think, on a much more visceral level than you are now. So I think So it's hard to put that into words what I'm thinking, but I think you had to be a bit more weird 10 years ago in the way that you were forced to digest and you were forced
putting up with more things.
Deal with Bangkok on a much more rougher level than you are today.
Well, I mean, the bottom line, this is we've mentioned before, it's just a simple fact that even though traffic is still bad, it has gotten better. So you and I had to wrestle with worse traffic. And then again, the early people who came in the 80s and 90s, like they look at us like we have the easiest life ever.
Cream puffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, are you sad sitting there in your aircon taxi?
That's right. I want to mention this on this topic. It's worth mentioning that it does, of course, depend on why you're here. So there are expats who are, let's say, in the military or maybe on some type of corporate package, and those types of people, when I meet them, they're pretty normal. And the other thing is also the other subgroup I'll mention is retirees. Like retirees also tend to be fairly normal people. Like I just have met a bunch of dudes like retired here, and they come from a variety of very normal middle class jobs. Like so, they are in a way they are in some ways on an adventure in that they're retiring in a foreign country, but it's just not the same as when you come here in your 20s or 30s. Like they're really coming here for peace. Like they're not coming here actually for an adventure.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, because the flip side of this is maybe like not, do you need to be a weirdo to live here? It's, are you more easier able to find a normal, quote unquote, normal lifestyle here than you used to be? So I think, definitely now you are. So you can find the creature comforts of home much easier than you used to be. You can be in contact with everyone at the couple of taps on your phone. So finding that normal lifestyle as close to it as possible is much easier than it used to be, and even much easier than it used to be for someone like Joe. But
that's right, for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is it's kind of a special case. I mentioned I made a joke earlier about friends of ours who have gotten tired of Bangkok or pissed off or just aggravated, and they've bailed, which I understand.
Yeah.
But I've had several of those friends who've actually come back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. People who get tired of the weirdness and chaos of Bangkok. They don't understand it, and they snap and they go somewhere else. Either they go back home, or in the case of one of my friends, he moved to Japan, and at first when he moved to Japan, he was just talking about how much saner it was, and it's just calmer and more stable, and I got the vibe from him that he was just ready. He was just more mature, and he's just gonna lead a more reasonable life in Japan. And now all he can talk about is coming back to Thailand.
Well, we both have a friend who moved to the Philippines a bunch of years ago.
That's right.
And he was done with Thailand.
Totally done.
Moved to the Philippines, but now he's back here.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, I guess my answer to the main the main question. I know this affects a lot of our listeners out there. A lot of our listeners are expats. So we're basically calling our listener base weird. That's what we're doing.
Well, man, I'll be the first one to say that I'm weird. I am the stranger. I'm the weirdo. I'm the guy that left my comfy little friendly life.
But my point is, like, by background, you're not weird. Like, you're not. But there is something maybe about your personality and my personality that we didn't get too freaked out by Bangkok. We didn't panic. We didn't leave. We didn't get too aggravated.
Right.
We adapted somehow. So maybe that is weird.
Maybe. And again, I talk about my buddy Mark. I came to Thailand with him on a vacation, and we were supposed to stay for 4 months, and he left after, barely 2 weeks.
That's right.
So
yeah.
it's, and
I think most people just appreciate the familiar.
Right.
And it's kind of not on their radar. When I think of some of my sisters or my buddies, they're super smart, like just curious people, but just living in a foreign country, it's just not on their radar. They're just, they don't get it. They're just like, why would I do that? So it's just, we're just off the map.
Right.
What's that expression from the old maps? Like, here there be dragons. Like we're just off the map. Like, but it's just not in their mindset. They're just not thinking of living somewhere halfway around the world.
Right.
So I guess that is weird then. We're weird, dude.
It's funny how you sort of building a life in Bangkok as a bit of an achievement, right? Like a merit badge, which we've talked about. But I think after a while, I'm really proud of the fact that I've managed to survive and thrive in Thailand, because it's not even something that most people would even consider, let alone try.
I guess I am. I mean, the fact that I've made a life. Let's just say that, I'm not super successful, but I've made a life,
mm-hmm.
and I kind of stuck it out. I guess I feel good about that. But the other thing I want to point out is this, that I would not be here if I was not unhappy as a lawyer. So you and I have different backgrounds, career-wise and stuff like that. But I mean, like, Thailand definitely is or was plan B for me. So I just want to be honest about that. Like, I was a lawyer in the States. I wasn't happy. I started taking some teaching jobs in the States, but I was very much a lost soul. And then I took a teaching job here, and then, ended up falling in love with that. But if I do consider myself a failed lawyer, so for me, it was a plan B.
Right. Okay. I didn't even have, I didn't have a plan. I didn't plan A or B. It just,
oh, okay.
It just sort of happened. I didn't have a plan A or B at home.
Yeah. But to me, I've met so many different people here with different backgrounds. So some people are here and they're coming from like success to success. But then I've met many people here who are just more like lost souls, or this didn't work out, or they lost this job, or they got divorced, or whatever.
Right.
But to me, that doesn't really change much, because that's just kind of like why you're here, but it doesn't say why you stayed or why it worked out.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think as we're finishing up here, I think sort of my takeaway is you have to be weird to live here, in the respect that you have to be prepared to reject the things that make you safe and comfortable and familiar back home, which is, it goes against human nature. It goes against what people expect to you. So that can be seen as weird. But you can live here and be a very normal person. And I think these days it's even easier to do that and to have more of the creature comforts that you're used to, that keep you, that make you feel safe than you could 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago.
I mean, I had a pretty easy transition in 2000, to be honest. And I think it's certainly easier now.
Yeah, definitely. So my take is that, you've got to be a weirdo to live here. But that doesn't mean that you're a weird person, just that you're more comfortable doing things that probably most people back home would not even consider.
Makes sense. Like, that was my impression talking to talking to people back home is that I'm just off their radar. I'm off the I'm off the map. I'm off the map.
Yeah. I know my friends, every once in a while they'll pull out their yearbook back home and who's that guy? Oh, that's Greg. Yeah, he just went off the radar, man. He moved to Thailand and he's never come back. What a weirdo. What a strange, eccentric man that guy is.
So funny.
Crazy Uncle Greg. Yeah. Anyway, but we love our fellow weirdos who live in Thailand, and
for sure,
we welcome your weirdness. Yeah. All right. Hey, we ask our listeners to send in a voicemail using our little microphone button on the website if they have something to say. And this week we heard from our pal Eric. Take it away, Eric.
Hey guys, I'm taking advantage of the holiday Wednesday and heading out on the BTS to explore the Samrong area. And I was just listening to the bonus episode, and Ed said something I just wanted to quickly send a voice note in about, that he appreciates Thais who know about the world, that you guys have joked about Thais not knowing much about their neighbors, Cambodia, Myanmar. And I just wanted to remember him that there are countless, and I mean countless, comedians who go around America and ask Americans questions about Canada and Mexico that they have no clue the answers to. So I think it's a pretty common thing around the world where people don't know much about their neighbors, or unfortunately just have very negative views of them. So yeah, we're a select few, and when you do meet people who are connected, for sure it's cool. But I don't know if Thais are any different than Americans who know absolutely nothing about Canada or Mexico, which are very important partners right next to them. So yeah, just a quick reminder. Cheers, guys. Have a good day.
Hey, Eric, man, thanks for that message. And I just want to say this. You are 1,000,000% correct about Americans. Americans are actually famously ignorant of really. I mean, no, this is a joke among Americans, and it's been on the Tonight Show, Jay Leno, where they even ask Americans questions about, Montana, and they, they think it's a foreign country. No, Americans are famously ignorant of geography, either inside the U.S. or outside the U.S. So your point is very well taken. But I will say this in defense of my point: Europeans are very aware of their neighbors, and my joke about Europeans is that they speak a minimum of 3 languages.
Right.
My European friends, and I think the U.S. is different than Thailand in that the U.S. is so damn big. Like, all of Thailand almost fits inside of Texas, and it almost fits inside of one state. And so the U.S. being geographically so huge and having different states, it's a little bit more understandable. Americans should know more about Canada and Mexico. There's no doubt about it. So I'm not disagreeing with that. But I just think that how crowded Southeast Asia is and the size of the countries, and I think most Thai people would even, admit, I mean, they really almost know nothing. So I'm gonna say you're not wrong about Americans, but I don't think I'm wrong about Thai people. I feel like they should know more about their neighbors.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Man, there was the iconic Canadian comedy show called This Hour Has 22 Minutes years and years ago in like the late 90s. And there's a legendary comedian named Rick Mercer who would go around and he would have conversations with Americans, and he would get them to like, hey, we're from Canada. We're doing messages from our American friends. And he would have people on camera going, congratulations, Canada, on finally getting the technology for VCRs in your country. And this was in like 1996 kind of thing.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And he would make them say all kinds of silly thing. But man, Canada has morons too. And I, shamefully, I know a few of them. And I remember they will remain nameless in the off chance that one may listen. But, 5 years ago, I was talking to a really good friend of mine from high school who I was very tight with my whole life. And was having a conversation with him. We hadn't talked in about 10 years. And it just sort of hit me in the middle of our conversation. I'm like, wow, this person is really dumb. They don't know anything about anything in the world. They only know the little town that we grew up in. And, you know, I've got friends in Canada who purposely do not read any news at all about anything. So they're sort of like the ignorance is bliss crowd. But yeah, Thailand doesn't have a lock on it for sure.
I appreciate the comment though. Americans, we're just going to have to plead guilty to geographic ignorance, guilty as charged.
I was telling my son tonight, I said, when we're going to redecorate his room, and I said, I'm going to make sure you get a gigantic map on your wall. And he's like, why? And I said, because I don't want you growing up to be one of those people that doesn't know how many continents there are. And he's like, okay. So
That's great.
yeah. Anyway, thanks, Eric. That's great. And good insight.
Okay, a final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
True that. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. Send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show, just like we just did with our pal Eric. Hit me up on threads at BKKGreg. Thanks for listening, everyone. Watch out for that deep water when you're waiting to your car. And we'll see you back here next week.
No doubt. Yeah, I kind of think I'm right. Americans are ignorant, but our country is huge.
Yeah. Same Canada.
Whereas I think Thai people, they should be a little bit more like Europeans, is the point I was trying to make. You know, like people from Belgium, like know everything about Germany, France, the Netherlands. Like
right.
They're totally.
Well, that would be like someone from Washington might know everything about Oregon, but they don't know anything about North Carolina. And why would they?
Right, exactly.